Hey guys, how's it going? So it's 37 days since summiting Mount Katahdin on my thru-hike of the Appalachian Trail in 2021, and I'm here at my folks' house, and I thought I'd go through a quick overview of the gear I carried, or at least some of the gear I finished with. So you can see I got my pack on me right now, and it's loaded up mostly as it would have been when I finished the trail, with just a couple of exceptions. Go ahead and dump everything out up here, and I'll give you a look at it. So before we open up the pack and get into the gear inside, I thought I might just give a quick overview of how it's loaded up and what some of the stuff I keep on the outside of the pack. So down here is the 1/8 inch Gossamer Gear foam mat, which I used underneath of my sleeping pad just to help keep it from rolling around inside the tent and sliding all over. Also on the outside pocket I have my Frog Togs poncho, which I loved, and my toilet kit, so we'll get into that a little bit later as well. On the outside of the bag, I also kept the Garmin InReach Mini, which was good for tracking, always showed my location. If it was raining and I had my poncho on over my bag and myself, I would take this and actually just clip it, instead of clipping it up here on my bag, just clip it right down low, because the poncho wouldn't obscure its view of the sky and I could still get GPS reception. Oof. Okay, also on the outside of the bag, over on my left-hand side pocket, you can see that's my, ubiquitous Thermarest sit pad. And I also kept, like, my water kit. So my water kit, this is just the Anchor battery box bag that I liked. Super lightweight and breathable. I did use the 3-liter CNOC bag, which worked really great for me. Loved it. Wouldn't have traded that for a 2-liter. Who cares about the extra ounce, I say. And then the Sawyer Squeeze, the full-size Sawyer Squeeze. That was all in my water kit. While I was on trail, I actually was keeping the Squeeze inside of a Ziploc bag as well, so that, I don't know, just kind of to keep things dry, but more than anything, so that I always had like an instant scoop. If I needed to scoop water, if it wasn't running enough for me to just harvest it directly, I would have to scoop water using that Ziploc bag. Also on the outside of the pack, so over here, I kept my tent stakes. My Z-Pack's duplex only needs 8 stakes, but I always carried 9. We'll get into that. One kind of mostly just for extra, but I kept it busy. I also carried just some extra line, some extra whatever, I think that's the Z-Pack Skyline or whatever. But I used it a couple times to hang clothes and kind of, I don't know, call me old-fashioned. I just like having backup cordage with me. A couple of other things on the outside of the pack. Right towards the end of my pack, towards the end of my trip, in fact at Shaw's, I found like this ubiquitous, whatever it is, maybe half inch blue foam exercise mat material, and just cut it and made extra shoulder pads for my shoulders. I mean, I'd lost so much weight, and the pack was getting pretty uncomfortable, so I thought that those actually helped a ton. Those helped a ton, and I was really thankful to have done that. I also have the, I forget exactly what the brand is, I'll put it below, but sort of a little GoPro mount that I would use for like my weekly health updates or any of my POV shots. Face cloth. This was great for wiping the nose, great for wiping sweat, great for honestly even just drying off if you were a little wet or whatever. I also used it, I know it's kind of overkill, but I kind of reserved the top half, like, you can see like the top half and the bottom half. I kind of reserved the top half for my face and mostly nose, and then the bottom half was for wiping off my lens, the lens of my camera. Just that I wasn't like wiping snot all over my camera and stuff. Helped me keep organized. I had sunscreen and hand sanitizer. Honestly, I didn't use these a whole ton. I did have hand sanitizer that I kept in my toilet kit, and that was really the majority of the hand sanitizer I used was after bathroom breaks. So I really didn't use those ones in my bag too terribly much, but it still felt appropriate to carry them. And then also on my left strap, I have the Justin's UL. You can buy those off Etsy, just a little smart water bottle holder. So as I was hiking, I've already gotten rid of all my smart water bottles. But as I was hiking, I would have one right here that I would drink from, and then I would have a backup over in my right-hand side pocket. So, so that was, I would usually kind of keep that just for kind of what I would call clean water. So all the water that I had in my bottles were filtered. But the one that I kept on my shoulder up here may have been flavored with like, one of liquid IVs or something like that. And the one on the side pocket, I didn't always observe this, but I tried as much as possible just to never drink out of that directly. So like if the one on my shoulder got empty, I would use the one on my side pocket to refill it, which is maybe a little OCD or something, but my thought was that way if I needed to share my water bottle or if I got cut or whatever, that bottle was theoretically at least a little cleaner. So there'd be no like germ contamination or whatever else. Again, I didn't observe it 100% of the time, but I tried. Final thing I'll say about the outside of my pack is that I did get the extra lumbar support. And again, when I stopped in Shaw's in Monson, Maine, so I was pretty much at the end of the trail, just before the 100-mile wilderness, I cannibalized a couple of Injinji socks, which had pretty well blown out, the toe socks. And this had just gotten like a little sharp on the bottom, like some of the material had frayed. So I just cut off the sleeves, sort of like the tube top portion of the Injinji toe socks, and put them over that, and honestly it helped a ton, so I was pretty thrilled with that. Let's see, anything else about the outside of the pack? What I'll say is also generally on my left hip belt, you can see how this little windbreaker is clipped on there right now. I also took to clipping my bear bag, not my bear bag, but my bear bag tie line, like my throw line for the bear bag. I would clip that on the outside on my left waist. Not left for any particular reason aside from that I'm right-handed, but the main advantage of that was this way, if I was hiking and I found a good camping spot, I didn't have to go to camp and then leave camp again before pitching my line. If I knew I was going to be camping close and I saw a great tree, I could just, without even taking off my pack or taking out my bear bag or anything, just unclip the line, throw the rock bag over the tree, and then just go into camp, have dinner, get my tent all pitched up and stuff like that, and then just come back and I'd already have my line up. So again, a little silly, but I think it definitely saved me a couple minutes from time to time. That is about everything on the outside of my pack. Let's go ahead and crank into it, and I'll tell you a little bit about how it was packed as well. Alright, so opening up the pack, right on top is an extra Dyneema dry bag, and the only thing in here was just my down puffy. This always lived on the top of my pack, especially early on the trail, but as the days were getting warmer and the trail was getting, more and more behind me and less in front of me, I kind of switched that up, and I would start putting, kind of burying my down a little bit. If it was going to be 80 degrees outside, there's really no point in keeping your down super handy. But yeah, right on top would be my down, again in an extra Dyneema dry bag, just because I always wanted that to stay dry. Underneath that, we have the tent. So that's the ground cover, and that's the Z-Packs duplex. Alright, so underneath the duplex, the tent, I'd have my bear bag. We'll get into this in a minute. That's all my kitchen, all my food, all that. And moving lower in the pack underneath the bear bag, I have my dry bag. So this is actually a switch. I wound up getting the Z-Packs Dyneema dry bag because my old dry bag kept ripping. I had one of the Nylaflume pack liners, and it just kept ripping. So I wasn't really in love with that. And even though these things are quite pricey, I'm happy that I made that switch. Just bit the bullet and bought the more expensive full pack sized dry bag pack liner in there. So in the dry bag, I have my ditty bag. I have my clothes bag / pillow / pump sack. And then at the very bottom, I also have my sleeping bag down there. It's my 20-degree sleeping bag. And way down at the very bottom of the pack, I also kept my first aid kits. There's all sorts of miscellaneous goodies in here. We'll crank into that. Alright, and there we are with the Z-Packs all pitched up. I did use the ground cover. I know that a lot of people I've heard don't use the ground cover for the Z-Packs duplex. And probably you don't need it. I never really felt like it was necessarily compulsory by any means, but I always used it. I just felt like, man, that's an expensive tent. I really don't want anything to happen to it, so call it paranoia or whatever. The other thing about having the ground cover that was really handy was there were multiple times where, like, if you're pitching up in a rain, I could kind of forego the ground cover, which sounds silly and counterintuitive to forego the ground cover in a rain. But what I would do is take off my pack, set it down kind of on one side of the ground cover, and then roll the ground cover over it as like a taco so that my pack and everything was staying dry. I got my tent pitched up. So that's a Z-Packs duplex. And it's pitched right now just the way I'd like it most nights. Usually I would pin up all four sides, and love this tent. Can't say enough good things about it. I also would more times than not, there aren't any sticks around, but use sticks to kind of tie out these guy lines to give myself a little more head and foot room, which is pretty handy. So Yeah, so that's the tent. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's in the clothes bag. All right, so the idea of the clothes bag is a bit of a misnomer. Again, it's really the pump sack for my air mattress that I would sleep with. And unfortunately, the air mattress that I used towards the end of the trail is returned for warranty. So what I have out instead, just for example, is the Thermarest Neo Air X-Therm, which is a super insulated sleeping pad, way heavier, about 3 or 4 times the weight of the one I finished the trail with. But this thing is an absolute monster when it comes to just being rugged, tough, heavy, but super, super, super warm. So again, the way this would usually work is you put down the sleeping pad first, the little foam mat, and then inflate the sleeping pad up on top of that. Before we get into what's actually inside the clothing bag itself, I thought I'd go through my worn clothes for the day. So starting up top, I had an outdoor research hat as well as my Oakley sunglasses. If you remember the episode where my cousin came out to hike with me, those are the replacement glasses, obviously, because my cousin's dog destroyed the first set, but that's all right. CeeLo's a good dog. This is a Buff, lightweight merino wool buff, which was really, really great. Really loved this piece of gear. It's great on cold nights. You can kind of pull it up over your face and just kind of keep the chill off your face. This is REI Co-op synthetic t-shirt. Really like this one. It's not the quickest drying thing on the planet, but it's, I mean, they call it quick dry and it's pretty good. And I liked it. It was comfortable. I don't know if I'd use it for another Thru-Hike. I mean, at this point, I don't even know. It's probably got like 3,000 miles in its whole life. The Topo Trail Ventures. Love these shoes. I went through 4 sets of these. I also used, I think it's Nathan. Yeah, Nathan brand, sort of like quick laces for these. Loved these things. And I had the Soul brand insoles in there. I'm not sure if you can see those guys or not, but the Soul brand insoles were really, really good. Those are the thick style, I think is what they call them. 4 pairs of these, sorry, I should say 3 pairs of these, and I started with the waterproof version of these, but love them all, love them all. Really, really great shoes, and Topo's a great company that took good care of me, so no sponsorships or free shoes or anything like that, but they took good care of me on trail. And then the Dirty Girl Gaiters, love those things, fantastic. I did go through, this was my 2nd pair of them on trail. The first pair just started getting little holes in the side. I'm sure it was just rubbing up against rocks on the side of my shoe, and once there are holes, the dirt was getting into my shoe, so love those Gaiters as well. And then I had the Ex Officio boxer briefs, 9-inch men's boxers. Those are great. This is a knee brace, I guess, that I bought at a Walgreens, I think in Hiawassee, if I'm not mistaken. My right knee was kind of bothering me, and I used it the whole rest of the trail every day on my right knee. So even though my knee was feeling better, I'm a superstitious person, and I just kept wearing it. Beneath that, I had the Zensah compression leg sleeves. This, again, was the 2nd pair of these that I went through on trail. Love these things. Were really good for kind of like, again, just that little bit of gentle compression in the leg was really, really helpful for me, especially as I was dealing with some shin issues through the Smokies. And then every single day I wore 2 pairs of socks as well. I wore the Injinji toe socks, and I wore these darn tough merino wool, sort of like, you know, relatively short socks. So that would have been my outfit for one day. Would have been all this stuff over here. I mean, and when I say outfit for one day, of course, I mean I was wearing all of this stuff multiple days. The only other clothing item that I had, which I was wearing when I filmed, was the Patagonia shorts that I wore every day. Love these shorts, and they actually held up pretty well. I mean, there's a little bit of wear in the seat for sure, but aside from that, the only thing, I mean, there was never a hole, they never punctured, anything like that. Aside from that, the only thing that happened, just a tiny little tear down here at the seam. Otherwise, love these shorts. They did have a liner built in as well, just like a brief liner, which I know sometimes people cut these out, or sometimes people use them in lieu of other underwear, but I found they really helped just to kind of like keep everything snug so that I wasn't getting any sort of chafing. But some of the extra stuff I carried in my pack then, I carried an extra pair of undies, same, you know, same style, just a different color. Carried an extra pair of the Injinji toe sock liners. Carried an extra pair of the same style again, just a different color of the Darn Toughs. I carried the beanie. Now this, I kind of kept feeling an impulse to get rid of this throughout the course of the trail, and I was always glad that I did not. It just kept helping me. I mean, even like as the weather was warming up, and it wasn't really cold so much overnight, but I mean, cold enough that you want to, especially once I shaved my head, just kind of throw something on to keep your head warm overnight. And then again, these I know would be like the bane of the existence of any sort of, you know, ultralighter, but my long wool socks that I kept not only just as backup socks in case something went wrong with the rest of my kit. I was a little paranoid at the beginning of the trail, but also these were just great to switch into at night. So these would be like my camp socks with what I call my Birken Crocs, my little Crocs material Birkenstocks that I wore as my camp shoes. So these things, I mean, just loved it. Again, I was never that desperate to save whatever it is, 1.5 ounces and just forego camp socks or 3 ounces, whatever, who cares. Yeah, so I carried those the whole way as well. And then an ace bandage. Luckily I wound up not needing this specific ace bandage, but frequently enough I kind of felt myself in a position where I wanted an extra ace bandage, be it for my knee or my ankle or my shin or something. So I kind of decided that's probably something I'm going to carry on future hikes as well. So we have all the worn clothing, we have the backup / extra clothing. The only other thing that was in my clothes bag was an extra towel. This is in addition to the one that I kept on my pack, and it's just a little microfiber towel. I think, I don't know what, maybe 20 by 16 or 24 by 16 or something like that. But again, I was just kind of paranoid, so I carried an extra towel in case my tent was ever wet and my face cloth was ever wet. I mean, if you're planning on using the towel on the outside of your pack to dry out the inside of your tent in a rainy day or something, I mean, if it was a rainy day, chances are the towel on the outside of your pack is going to be wet too. So I liked keeping one that was just kind of sacred and dry at all times. The only other thing I kept in there was my pack liner. And I love this thing. I love this thing. For one, it kept my sleeping bag super clean. So I didn't really have to worry about like my stinky body stinking up my sleeping bag and just totally destroying it prematurely or stinking it up or anything. I would just throw this into the wash every time I did laundry in town. Something else I really loved about it was that as the nights were warming up, I would pretty much just use this and sleep with my sleeping bag all balled up at the bottom of my tent, and kind of pull it up as I need to as like the chill at like 2, 3, 4 in the morning starts coming in. Then I'd pull up my sleeping bag. But this thing was amazing. And one other garment I definitely couldn't skip is my Skylight gear Polartec Alpha hoodie, which is absolutely fantastic. If you hold it up to the light, you can see light passes through very easily, so it's super breathable and pretty darn lightweight. But boy, this thing kept me warm, but at the same time wasn't so warm that I couldn't hike in it. So on those chilly mornings where I wanted to get on trail and didn't want to stop in 10 minutes to take off layers, this was the absolute perfect dream. And it was also great at camp, even as it was getting hotter, because it was so breathable that I could put it on even when it was warm outside, and it would be a nice dry layer, again treated with insect shield, nice dry layer that would keep bugs away from me, but you know, not burn me up. So this is a great item. Shout out to Spencer. One final thought about all the clothing that I wore and carried. All of it, if you hadn't noticed, was treated with insect shield. Again, not a sponsorship at all. I received nothing from any of these companies, but Insect Shield is a great company that does like a professional quality permethrin application on clothing for hikers or whoever else. And compared to like the Sawyer brand permethrin treatment, which is supposed to be good for 6 washes or 6 weeks, the Insect Shield is supposed to be good for like 70 washes, or pretty much just the whole lifetime of the product that's been treated. So that was all of my socks, all of my shorts, my buff, my hat, my gaiters. I did not treat my underwear. That's definitely not a good idea. And definitely my leg compression as well. I will say that I noticed the leg compression treatment tended to wear off after a while. Like I would get mosquitoes biting me through the leg compression, which is pretty disheartening. But I think it's just because they're stretchy, and that elastic would just kind of break down the treatment, is what I'm guessing. But yeah, that's my clothes bag. Let's go ahead and jump into the ditty bag. All right, so inside the ditty bag is one of the Hilltop Packs, Dyneema bags, I should say. I liked it. It was just a little bit larger than the Z-Packs bag of similar sort of design, but I kind of liked it being just a little bit larger. Didn't need a huge bag, but I liked something a little bit bigger. Over here I had extra GoPro batteries, and Hilltop Packs also makes this awesome battery bag, which obviously red on one side, green on the other. And then there's this little wall so that you can kind of keep track of which batteries are charged and which are, shall we say, less charged perhaps. Beneath that, this wonderful little bag that looks pretty much crazy. This is 2 of the little whatever clothespins. We'll get to that, and then a whole bunch of these little eye screws here. So these were great, especially once you got further north into Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, stuff like that, when you're camping at shelters is all in tent platforms. You could drive in some of these and then rig your guy lines out to your eye hooks instead of trying to, you know, finagle a way to put a tent stake into a wooden platform. Meanwhile, the clothespins were great for pinning up the Z-Pack's duplex flaps if there was a rainy night where you still wanted some air to come through. Over here I had my 20,000 milliamp Anchor external battery, so that had 2 out ports, and the inputs, you could not use them in parallel, so you could either charge using the USB-C or the micro USB. Loved this battery, served me great. I even dropped it in the water wicked early into my hike, and just let it dry out, and it worked great. So it was dropped into a big old puddle, but still worked great, so that was good. Ibuprofen, I mean, no more to say. This is the Nightcore New 25 with the kind of the ultralight, you know, whatever, the lighter weight headband. I like it a lot, but as you can see, this little washer, I had to glue. I wound up breaking the rings, which the actual headlamp electronic part itself sits in the brace. So I glued these little washers on, just used some super glue and glued on washers to kind of reinforce that. This light was great. I didn't use it a ton, to be perfectly honest. I was usually bunked up by the time it got pretty dark, but I love this light. The 3 different intensities, and then the 2 different intensities for the red light. I mean, if you're gonna be hiking the Appalachian Trail, dude, you gotta buy a headlamp that has a red light, because otherwise, I mean, I'll just go ahead and say it, otherwise you're a jerk. So get something that has a red light and make all your neighbors love you. So that was the headlamp. Aside from that, I had 1 extra stick pick, the little mount that I used for all my videos and stuff, and a couple extra components for the stick pick. I found that this little bolt right down here on the bottom, which you can use to fasten onto the trekking pole, frequently got lost. So I wound up, it was just not exactly the right size. I wrapped it up with like some Tyvek tape so that it would have a little bit more meat to it, a little bit softer, so that it wouldn't just rattle out as I hiked. But yeah, stick pick, I mean, I must have lost, I don't know what, 12 or 15 of these bolts, so I'm sorry for violating leave no trace. Trust me, I did not want to lose those bolts, but they just got lost. So yes, that was the stick pick. Extra accessories. I had my headphones, not much to talk about there. I will mention that I glued on these little earpieces. I lost a couple sets of them, and when I finally got a replacement set, I just went ahead and super glued them on. I'd definitely recommend that, because they'll just get lost and then they're pretty much useless. Earplugs, very much a necessity on trail, whether you're in a hostel or just in a busy campground. It's really nice to get good sleep, so earplugs, definitely recommend. And then in the Ziploc bag, I had some extra sort of electronic components. So I had the, let's see, that's my Anchor charger. So I had the 2 different ports of the USB-C and the standard USB. I had a 10-foot USB cable, which might seem a little bit excessive. That's a double USB-C. Again, I use a Galaxy S10e to process my videos and all that. There she is right there. Galaxy S10e, which charges with the micro USB. And then I also had a 3-foot USB to USB-C cable. So basically I could use this for charging up my battery as I was using this 10-foot cable, which I could use from a distance to charge my phone, which was really nice. Aside from that, I also had a couple of adapters. So this is 2 USB-C to micro USB, which was good for charging my headlamp, also charging my Garmin InReach Mini. And then this wonderful little thing saved me a ton of time. It's a micro USB card reader, which just went straight into USB-C. So basically every night when I processed videos, I would open up my GoPro, I would take out the memory card, pop the memory card into this, pop this into my phone, and now all of a sudden I didn't need to waste all that time and battery transferring the files wirelessly. And it worked like a champ. It worked like an absolute champ. I don't think I would have been able to do videos without it. That's really how indispensable it was. I didn't file down the edges a little bit because it wouldn't fit into my phone case, and I didn't want to have to take off my phone case every time, every single night. But once the edges were filed down, it fits into my phone case just great. And this one too, actually, I dropped into another puddle. Or no, I think I sent it through the wash at some point. I sent it through the laundry at some point. But again, luckily it dried up just fine and it was super happy. So yeah, can't say enough about that thing either. So that is the contents of my ditty bag. I'll also say I carried one of those little Cork Rology massage balls for quite some time, but I just got rid of it because I really was never using it. I was like never using it, which shame on me, I guess, but I wasn't using it, so I ditched it, you know. Yeah, there's the contents of the ditty bag. Electronics and some tent stuff. Alright folks, the contents of my first aid kit here. So we will start over on the left with a rather insane and excessive amount of super glue. I found as the trail went on, I was using super glue more and more just to glue together my shoes, or, you know, honestly, super glue, even crazy glue, I think was invented as a first aid, like a proper human first aid tool. So you could even glue closed cuts with that. But I carried a few different kinds of super glue. I didn't wind up gluing any cuts closed, which is nice, but you know, I like carrying super glue anyways. I often found other hikers were looking for it or had a broken shoe or whatever, and I could help them out, so that was good. Another thing that added to my first aid kit later as the hike went on was a few salt packets. If you're going swimming up in those Maine ponds and New Hampshire ponds and things like that, leeches are a real thing. So if you want to carry some salt packets in your first aid kit, maybe not the worst thing. I didn't wind up carrying any band-aids when it came to first aid, really. Instead, what I carried was just a little rolled gauze, a little package of rolled gauze and extra Leuko tape, and I could just make my own band-aid, basically. I have my Swiss Army knife, my little, like, just Victorinox Swiss Army pocket knife thing, so I could cut off some Leuko, cut off some gauze, make a little band-aid, polysporine. In this straw is a little bit of hand sanitizer. I put just like a little emergency amount of hand sanitizer in there in case I cut myself or my hand sanitizer was empty or whatever. I had kind of one good shot of hand sanitizer that I could carry around with me. Moving on from that stuff, I did have an extra set of headphones, which, as you can notice, they do not have the earpieces on them. This is the set that I lost the earpieces for before I started gluing them in, and then I had some extra earpieces with me as well. Some extra earplugs. Of course, those weigh, I mean, if they weigh 4 grams, I'd be amazed. So really, it's worth carrying, I think. I also had a gear first aid kit. So the gear first aid kit was a few more, you know, alcohol wipes. I had a patch, a couple different types of patches, and some, you know, tenacious tape and this and that. Just things I could keep my gear up afloat with. An extra little, you know, microfiber towel for cleaning off lenses. This is just a little fold of aluminum foil that I carried. I'm not really sure why, but I carried it. There you have it. And one little blister band-aid, which I wound up never ever using, thank goodness. Really, I found the Leuko tape was plenty sufficient for curing what ailed me in the blister department. And then this was just a couple of squares of toilet paper, not for the reason you might think though. My toilet paper is in my bathroom kit, which we haven't quite gotten to, but I found, if we look over here at my shoes, as I was gluing my shoes, to avoid gluing my actual finger onto the shoe, I would put the glue in there and then hold, you know, between my finger and the shoe, I would put a little square of toilet paper, and that way, you know, I could take my finger away without it being glued to the shoe, and if the toilet paper stayed on the shoe, as it often did, well, better that the toilet paper stay on the shoe than my finger, so that was kind of the thought with a couple extra squares of toilet paper. You'll notice I do not have a sewing needle in here or any thread. I was back and forth as to whether I ever wanted to carry those things and just decided against it. You know, if you carry it, good for you. If you don't, whatever. I also carried a couple of safety pins. Probably didn't need more than one, but these, of course, were good for, you know, you don't want to hear it, but they were good for lancing blisters, especially early on. You know, I'd have a lighter or something to kind of sterilize the safety pin first, but, you know, I mean, sometimes you just got to take care of yourself, and safety pins are good to have for lancing blisters when it comes to it. So anyways, that's the contents of the first aid kit. Let's get into that toilet bag now. All right, and there's my toilet bag. You call it your boom boom bag, or there's a word that rhymes with kit, which could precede the name, another name for it, blank kit. It kind of rhymes. I'll leave it to your own imagination. For this one, I did use the Z-Packs bag. This is the bag that I bought prior to buying those Hilltop Packs Dyneema bags. And this was just a little bit too small for a ditty bag, but it wound up being a perfect toilet bag. So in the toilet bag, of course, I have the Deuce of Spades, the UL Trowel, whatever it is, 0.6 ounces. Thing's a superstar, man. Works great. Really, really works great. I got it in blue so that I could always see it against the ground. There aren't too many blue pieces of earth around. Definitely kept an extra hand sanitizer in my blank kit. These are just a couple of baby wipes. They're little brown, don't be too worried. They're just kind of stained from dirt. There's nothing gross going on there. And then of course toilet paper, you know, just a roll of toilet paper. Some people pull the core out. Sometimes I pulled the core out. It really, I just can't for the life of me imagine it mattering that whole ton. And I did keep my toilet paper in an extra Ziploc bag inside of the Dyneema dry bag. I heard of plenty of hikers getting their toilet paper soaked, and obviously it's not the end of the world, we can improvise, but you know, I'd rather keep it dry if at all possible. I also carried a couple of Ziploc bags, and those were just dirty Ziploc bags, so if I was using the baby wipes for anything, or if I wanted, you know, if there was anything dirty that I didn't want to carry in my pack or my pocket or anything else, I was thankful to have a couple of Ziploc bags in my toilet kit that I could carry that in. So yeah, a couple of extra Ziploc bags, and that was about it. That's my toilet kit. I will say as a final thought, once I loaded this all up, and as I showed you, it lived on the outside of my pack, I'd always put it with the open side facing down inside the back of my pack. Again, just as one extra kind of preventative maintenance for, preventative measure, I should say, to try and keep everything dry. So it would live in my pack kind of upside down with the open side down. All right, and that brings up my kitchen, my food kit, my cook kit, whatever you want to call it. This is basically the long and short of it here. So we have the Z-Packs bear bag. I did glue, they didn't really stay great, but I did glue a couple of these like super reflective kind of safety high-vis things onto the bag, kind of wrapping around the bottom of the bag as the bag would be hung up in the sky. And honestly, that was really, 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 really cool, especially when I was waking up before sunrise and I wanted to go get my kitchen out of the sky. I mean, it would just pop from 80 feet away, no problem if you got your headlamp on. So definitely I would recommend, if you're not going to do this because you're not going to wake up before the sunrise, that's fine. But definitely on the Appalachian Trail there are a lot of this kind of bag, so definitely find a way to mark yours somehow, or else we're going to be getting it confused with those of other hikers. My cook pot was the Jetboil Stash. This one came out maybe like a week after I got on trail, and it is just a great little cook pot. I love it very much. There it is right there. Comes, what is that? I don't know what, 750 maybe capacity or so. Comes with a lid, which you may have noticed. The fuel canister lives snapped onto the lid. You can keep your lighter in between the fuel canister and the lid. I just didn't really care that much. I just kept the fuel canister, or I'm sorry, I kept the lighter in the bag where the actual stove itself lives. And again, kind of got, this isn't blue, but tried to get something colorful enough that I'd be able to find when I dropped it and stuff. So there's the stove itself. This is a great little cook kit for me. Definitely heavier than going cold soak, but really, really nice for me. The pretty common Tokes polished titanium bowl spoon, long handle spoon. These are great. You don't want a spork, just trust me, you just don't want a spork. And you do want a long handled spoon. So I don't know anyone who had a spork who really preferred it to a spoon. I don't think anyone's ever met anyone who prefers a spork to a spoon, but drop a comment if that's you, man. I'd love to hear from you. A couple of, I don't know, people would say luxury items. I don't really care. Just a little pop-up cup and a little pour-over filter. So this thing was great for my morning coffee. I never could develop a taste for the instant coffee. So what I would do is I would boil up some water, and I would bring my little grounds of Cafe Bustelo, put some Cafe Bustelo in here, pour over my hot water, throw in a breakfast essentials, and boy, you are cooking at that point, man. You got a delicious cup of coffee every morning. It cleans up nice, and honestly, I didn't expect this little thing to hold up through the whole trail, but I mean, it held up great, so no complaints in the world. I also brought a little Nalgene of olive oil with me every time I went out. When I started the trail, I didn't have this. Instead, I had a stick of butter. I mean, I started February 19th, so olive oil would have frozen, and I mean, not frozen, but just turned into like a block. So butter worked out early in the trail, but then I switched off to olive oil as things warmed up. In here, you'll notice toothpaste and floss, but no toothbrush. I've already thrown away that toothbrush. It was a disaster, but it did serve me well. I kept that in a Ziploc bag in my bear bag as well. The floss I never ever used on trail. My hands were just filthy on trail, but I did use it every single time I got to town, and I could enjoy the luxury of freshly flossed teeth. Aside from that, there's a little, I think it's Skoy is the brand, these wonderful little reusable laundry cloths or drying cloths, washcloth things. Any Europeans might be pretty familiar with these. They're pretty common in Europe. Less common in America, but boy, they are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful for backpacking. Just a little bit abrasive. They dry really quick. They're really, really good. So love that very much. I don't think I saw in here, I may have already removed, but usually in my bear bag also I would have a few of the Pepto-Bismol chewable tablets. Luckily I never needed them on trail, which I'm very, very thankful for, but they were definitely something that you would want to have just in case of emergency. I mean, it sounds funny, but there is nothing in the world funny about extreme dehydration on the trail when you're 2 or 3 days from town, so you definitely want to carry away some Imodium or something like that just in case. Some people carry that in their first aid, but my first aid lived way down at the bottom of my bag. And Pepto-Bismol being something that's edible had me very concerned about mice and rodents and smells and stuff like that, so I kept it in with my food bag, which was always totally separate from everything else in my kit. And just about my final piece of gear I'll talk about in this video is my fanny pack, or FUPA is what Z-Packs calls it. Really, really great little piece of equipment. So when I started getting really serious into hiking a year or two ago, I was using a different pack which had the kind of ubiquitous kind of belt pouches on the side, a couple pouches on either side of the belt, and I was keeping all of my snacks and stuff like that throughout the day, all my snacks, all my trash, in those kind of hip belt pockets. But you know, the more research I was doing and everything, and the more, you know, kind of stories I had heard about mice destroying people's equipment, I became less and less comfortable with the idea of putting anything food related into hip belt pockets. So when I switched out to the Z-Packs Arc Haul pack, I wound up getting, decided it would be prudent to get a fanny pack as well. So my fanny pack, this is where I kept my Swiss Army knife, I kept my chapstick, and I kept all of my snacks for the day. Snacks for future days would live in the bear bag. Snacks for my current day would live in the fanny pack. Any trash which I produced or which I collected along the trail, along the way, any of that would go into the fanny pack. Everything, food related, stinky in any way, would always either be in my fanny pack or in my bear bag. And then at the end of the night, my fanny pack would go with my bear bag and go up a tree or into a bear box or something like that. I never, ever played any games with food and smelly stuff. There were plenty of people I met on the trail who had packs and tents, sleeping bags, clothing destroyed from mice just chewing through them in the middle of the night. And I'd really, really rather not have to patch a sleeping bag or a tent ever, really, let alone on the field, in the field. So something else I did with my Z-Packs FUPA fanny pack is I kept my watch here, just kind of run through one of the little loops. This way I could tell temperature very easily without, you know, without it being influenced by my body temperature or anything like that. So it just kind of lived fastened onto my fanny pack. And then over here, this little carabiner S-clip, this is where I would clip my GoPro so that I had it easily accessible, especially after I dropped it off a cliff one day and it broke and I was very sad and I didn't have a GoPro for a while. I invested in this wonderful little S-clip, the S-beaner, and I would just clip my GoPro onto there, and I always had it accessible. It took an extra fraction of a second to take it off and shoot with it, but it was totally worth it. Just for reference, that is the Casio ProTrek watch that I was using. It has a thermometer, altimeter, barometer, and a compass on it as well, so that was really cool. Alright, so just about the final piece of equipment we're going to talk about in today's video is my sleeping bag. This is the second sleeping bag that I brought on trail with me. I started off with the Mountain Hardwear Phantom 0 degree sleeping bag, which was really great, but wound up being just heavier and bulkier than I needed. You'll notice I didn't say warmer than I needed. I was never uncomfortable in that sleeping bag, even once it got up to like 50 or 60 degrees overnight. That 0 degree sleeping bag was always comfortable. But once it did get up to those sort of temperatures reliably overnight, I switched out to the Feathered Friends Flicker UL 20 degree sleeping bag. And I loved this sleeping bag as well. Shoot, I shouldn't use past tense, I still love this sleeping bag. So the foot box sort of cinches down, and there's a zipper that runs the whole length of the sleeping bag, which goes all the way up, so you can close it all the way in if it's going to be a really cold night, or you can open it all the way up if it's going to be a mild night, or of course if it's going to be a warm night, you can just not use it at all. So it's configured right now in the way I would typically use it, which is just the bottom foot or two zipped closed, and then I would put the seam on the bottom side of the sleeping bag and just kind of sleep, you know, with my feet in the foot box, but everything else kind of flopping around over top of me like this. So my head would be up here, and everything I could just kind of push it on or off just like you would a blanket at home. But I found that keeping my feet zipped up in the foot box meant that I wasn't losing the sleeping bag. It wasn't getting pushed and thrown into the corner of my of my tent, that I'd have to go and find it at the end of the night. For a pillow, as you would have known by now if you were watching all of my Thru-Hike videos, I just used the pump sack stuffed with my extra clothes. It's not elegant, but I did start off with a Sea to Summit Aeros UL pillow, which I had used prior to getting on trail and enjoyed very much, but for whatever weird reason it just stopped being comfortable the minute I got on the Appalachian Trail. So I switched off to the pump sack full of extra clothes, and that worked like a champ for me. Alright guys, well that's it for the overview of all the gear that I finished the trail with. There was still plenty more gear which I started off with earlier that didn't make an appearance in this video just because I had already gotten rid of it and sent it home and didn't feel like it was worthwhile to include in this particular video. If you do want to see any further like in-depth reviews of any of the stuff you saw in this video, or have any other questions about why I was carrying it, why I wasn't carrying something, or how I liked it, I'm definitely more than willing to go into more detail on any of these items. Just drop a comment down below. Aside from that, thanks so much for checking it out, and I will check in with you all next time.